We've almost done 100 nights in our van now. We were going to make a video once we'd done 100 nights, but now that our government have just sent us into lockdown again, we're not going to get a chance to complete the final 4 nights for at least a month.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd bring this forward and just talk about some of the things we have changed since we've had the van and having used it for a year. So I've got a list in no particular order, and the first one is cupboards.
So we've changed how we've used the cupboards all throughout the van, really. So starting with under the sink, we used to use that to store some heavy duty things like the electric cable.
The biggest thing we've learned about life in a small camper van is you have to be absolutely ruthless with what you take with you. Those of you who have seen our first trip, we haven't stopped removing stuff from this van across the entire year we've been using it. So for instance, the electric cable now, we haven't used the electric cable once, have we?
No, it's still in its wrapper, brand new. Yeah.
And it weighs several kilograms. So by not taking it with us, we're saving all of that weight and of course freeing up the space it took. I'd had an emergency battery starter in there, and I've resolved that, you know, if I need to jumpstart my van, I'm just going to rely on the breakdown service. So what have we got in that cupboard now?
So it's purely for our cooking utensils, like the frying pan, the ridge monkey, the collapsible colander, and the flask.
Yeah, the flask.
Yeah, and the saucepan we now put in there, which we used to keep in the sink.
Yeah.
Which used to be annoying. Every time you wanted to use the sink, you had to take the saucepan out.
What about the big, large toilet cupboard that's underneath the seat?
Right, so that's where the Porta potty used to be, and obviously we don't take that away with us when we're wild camping, and that's a great cupboard for storing food.
Yeah.
So especially during this COVID situation, we want to take a lot more food away with us, so we don't have to keep going into food shops every day.
Particularly for the island trip, we wanted to reduce contact with the local population as much as we possibly could, which was the initial driver, wasn't it, for using that larger
it as
cupboard.
A food cupboard.
Yeah.
So what we have in there is a plastic container which we keep all the tinned food in, and that's great because you can just pull it out and you can see all the tins you've got and then just push it back in again, and it keeps them all nicely in place.
I think it's important to use a box for that, because as you use the tins and your stocks get less and less, then you need a box to stop them rolling around and shifting as you drive.
Yeah, definitely. And there's still plenty of room beside that for other foodstuffs, so like packets of pasta and a tin of biscuits and anything else that you want to put down the side.
Yeah. Just before I forget, a note on the toilet. We don't bother taking that chemical toilet with us, but I did say in one of the previous videos that I would test that toilet, and we have made use of it. And my thoughts on it are that the capacity in the waste compartment on that toilet is really pretty small, and that means you're going to need to pull onto a campsite to empty that. And of course, if you're just using it for number ones, it is going to fill up pretty soon, especially if you're using the flush to clean the bowl after every use. And the other problem you'll have with that is that if you're wild camping and you don't want to go onto campsites, getting rid of the contents of that is far harder than getting rid of 2p bottles, isn't it?
It is,
that you can just pop into a rucksack. Because
it's an awkward shape. It wouldn't fit in your rucksack.
Yeah.
And you'd have to carry it into the toilet with you.
Well, I would just die if somebody stopped me carrying that into the toilets. I know we've seen on some YouTube videos that some people take their whole cassette toilet,
yeah,
don't
the
they?
whole
From
thing, yeah.
caravans and things,
Yes,
and the
yeah.
bigger vans
Yeah.
into toilets.
Public
But
toilets, yeah.
you know, it's going to be so obvious you're doing that.
And you might get away with that in a public toilet, but you
Yeah,
couldn't do it if you were
yeah.
going into a shop or
Like
a restaurant.
McDonald's or something like that.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
So the other
Yeah,
cupboard
the other
we've
cupboard.
changed is the cupboard where we keep all our clothes. And how we had that set up before, we had a piece of cardboard which we used as a shelf across the middle. And the idea was to keep separate clothes that were clean and clothes that you'd worn.
yeah.
But it didn't really work because the
No.
shelf kept flopping down and then things would get stuck and then you couldn't remember what was where. So we've taken the shelf out completely and we're stacking our little, what do you call them, the compression sets, packing cubes. We're stacking them on end in a row and we've colour-coded them. So
Yeah, because our bags are all the same colour.
Ken's has got some blue tape wrapped around it, mine's got some green tape just wrapped around the zipper, so when they're on end you can see whose is whose. And that seems to work quite well, and you can fit an awful lot in that cupboard, and if you've got it set in a certain order you know what's where.
Yeah, you manage all of that. I don't go in there unless I absolutely have to.
And we keep our toilet bags in there as well, and there's plenty of room for them.
Yeah, but that internal shelf didn't work at all, did it? So we got rid of that.
Failure.
Yeah, okay. What about the little cupboard next to the toilet cupboard?
Oh, the other cupboard under the bed, that's where we keep the tea and coffee. And next to the tea and coffee is a bit of space where we can keep things like the spare bin liners, we keep the fly spray in there, a few other bits of food.
The reality is now we have far more space in our cupboards
Yeah.
thanks to our being ruthless with what is actually needed.
Yeah, just basically food and clothes.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of other stuff.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, and I also keep in that cupboard my lovely little plastic container that I keep all the fruit and veg in. Because that doesn't have to go in the fridge, so it can just go in that cupboard under the bed, and that keeps fairly cool in there, which is really good.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing we've changed is the bin that we use.
Yeah.
So we used to have a really tiny bin for rubbish, and then we had a bigger IKEA bin which we used as a little sort of glove compartment between the seats for putting odds and ends in that we might need when we were driving. But we just realised we were going to need a bigger bin because that tiny bin got filled up so soon. You just put one tin of baked beans in it and it was full.
Yeah.
So
although in Ireland that would have been a pretty good system, wouldn't it?
Would have worked well in Ireland.
Because you can't throw your rubbish away in Ireland, we very quickly had to switch to using much smaller rubbish bins.
Yeah.
I think it's an open secret now amongst the campervan fraternity that when you go into Ireland, those places that don't provide bins, get yourself some very small, like sandwich bags almost, aren't
Yes, or some people use like little nappy bags.
they? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Little and often.
little and often, every time you see a bin, empty a bit of rubbish and just accept you're going to be going through bags.
Yeah.
And don't feel guilty about that for 1 second, because you know what should really be happening is they should be providing bins.
Yep, so we use the bigger bin now as our actual rubbish bin, and it also doubles up as a handy little table. So you might have seen in our videos we put the trays on it for dishing up food, and it goes nicely between the two seats, so you can sit there and use it as a side table for
Yeah,
your
that
cup of
little
tea.
IKEA bin, it was only about £5, wasn't it?
Oh, it's really
Less
cheap
than £5.
from IKEA. It's
Really
brilliant.
cheap.
Yeah.
I wish they'd made a black one.
Yes.
You'll see I've lashed mine up and covered it in black tape, just because I didn't really want it to just stand out between the seats when we leave the van and walk off. But it's perfect for fitting between the seats in an MV200.
Yeah.
And of course, you need to be able to lift that and move it out the way for when you twist the front passenger seat. So we can't have anything fixed there. Yeah. So that's been really...
Yeah, I'd definitely buy another one if
I
we
would,
see another one. And if they made a black one,
I'd
it'd be
snap
great.
it up in a flash,
Yeah.
Blackout shades.
Oh yes, blackout shades.
Okay,
So
well,
when we
go on in.
Go on, you start off when
I'll
we
start.
bought the van.
When we bought the van, we we're using the curtain supplied by Sussex Campervans. It's a good quality curtain. It's black. You can't see through it, and it's grey on the inside to match the inside of the van. But when we fitted it up, we found that there were two little gaps on the driver and passenger side doors, which, if you're on a campsite, don't really matter, because you're not going to ever have people walking up on your pitch and peering through your window. But when you're wild camping, you don't really want to show chinks of light. So we couldn't at that time come up with a solution for how to stop that. And Sussex Campervans, the only thing they could suggest was fitting what do they call it, Velcro to the top, but that would have looked a bit of a mess, so we didn't want to do that. And that is why we went away from using the supplied curtain, purely because of our wild camping needs, and especially when we're stealth camping, where it's important not to show any light at all from inside the van. So
we made some blinds for ourselves. So we just got some like insulating, like reflective type material, cut out the shapes of the windows, and then covered them in material that was waterproof on one side, and totally black, so it was totally blackout. And you'll have seen from our videos that they were great. You could fit them to all the windows at night and get a total blackout. And they did help to reduce the condensation slightly, but you still did get condensation. And they did help with insulation last winter when we were away.
It was definitely warmer using them.
But then this last trip in Ireland, we were finding they were a bit of a pain, having to keep putting them in at night, taking them out. They took quite a bit of time.
Well,
because it was warmer.
But hang on. The reason that we discovered that was because in Ireland we were doing more stealth camping.
Stealthy,
Now, somebody said in the comments the other day, how on earth with a big red van can you be stealthy? But when we talk about stealth camping, we're not talking about hiding the van. We're just talking about hiding the fact that we're inside it, using it and sleeping in it, or living in it at the time. That's what we mean by stealth camping. And so because we were doing quite a lot of that in Ireland, we got into the habit of merely dropping the internal curtain. And that works incredibly well. That if you sort that out properly and get it right, no light will leak through and nobody can see you're in there.
So we didn't bother putting any blackout at all in the front cab. We just dropped the internal black screen down and then just got into bed. And then in the morning, it's great because once you'd made the bed, there was a nice little area for you to get dressed and washed in private while the other person was sitting in the seat on the other side of the blackout curtain.
Yeah, that's right. So we quite liked that. And then, of course, because we were doing more and more of that, we had the problem of, well, where on earth did we put the blackout
and we
blinds?
Still had them with us at the time.
And they became a real pain.
They were a real pain,
And that's what gave us the resolve to say, look, we've really got to try and eliminate these from the van. Anyway, so when we got back home, first thing we did was we got the supplied blackout curtain back out of the loft and tried to resolve how we were going to stop any light showing through. And in the end, it just was so simple, wasn't it? It was just by using our magnets, 2 magnets each side. You can just offer that material up at the top of the door until it's blacked out and then just secure it with a magnet. And it's so much quicker, isn't it?
It works really well. So we'll have to try it in the winter, see how much condensation we get and whether it feels much colder without the insulation. But I'm sure
when we did
fine.
our first Sussex trip, the last video we did, we were using that, weren't we? That first night. And it was fine, but it wasn't a particularly cold
Not
night.
particularly cold then.
No, I don't personally. My gut feeling tells me it won't be a problem. We will have to use more heating.
When it's very cold.
But that isn't a problem. I mean, the convenience of using that curtain vastly outweighs any little bit of cost of using gas.
So we'll try and show you that on our next video when we're
Well-
staying a night. We'll put that up and show you what that's like.
We're going to be doing a few nights on the drive, not because we need a fix of camping, but just I want to test what that's like in really cold weather.
Yeah.
And to see what difference that makes to the level of condensation in the morning and stuff. So we might be in lockdown, but there's no problem testing that out on our own drive.
No.
Right, I think I'm going to end this video here because I don't want them to run too long. But do join us next time when we will continue to explain just what we've changed in the first year of using this van.